Hi, everybody. Jeff Slakey from the Alderbrook Resort for the Affordable Housing Workforce Summit put on by Peninsula Credit Union and a lot of other great organizations around Mason County. I'm now talking with Steve Zetz, the city planner for the city of Prosser here in Washington. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm well, thanks. Describe for me Prosser a little bit.
Prosser's a small ag town overshadowed by a larger metropolitan area, which is the Tri-Cities.
Mm-hmm.
It's the county seat for Benton County, and but again, its major industries are ag-related.
Where and when did the city realize or come to the realization that affordable workforce housing was needed in the city of Prosser?
Some years ago, a nonprofit came to the Prosser to propose a project that was specifically for the low-income population. And they were invited at the request of the city initially when it was discovered by a code enforcement program which had recently started that, for example, one house that they found had 21 people living in the basement.
Wow.
So it wasn't safe conditions. They realized that this was an ongoing thing and we needed to work towards addressing that, invited this nonprofit in and various other groups to start the conversation about that.
What does affordable workforce housing look like now in Prosser? How's the makeup? Is it multifamily dwellings, apartment living?
It's a combination of the two, but we still have a long ways to go on it. And based on the models that we saw with this previous group, we're looking at something new and different rather than what's been done in the past.
What was it like, and how perhaps difficult was it to explain to the citizens of Prosser that these changes were needed, and how was the initial reaction?
Well, the initial reaction was it was pretty contentious. The population, the surrounding area, as well as the citizens of Prosser, didn't understand what the need was. They didn't understand some of the terminology when you talked about low-income agricultural housing versus migrant worker housing. So there was a lot of education that went into it. But there was a lot of participation by the citizens. We ended up having to have our meetings at the local theater.
Wow.
To accommodate the crowds. But
and that is encouraging to you that folks are engaged in the process and are looking to move forward, or is it just more better understanding what the needs are?
It's better understanding, knowing that it's not some entity that's looking for housing. It's their friends, their neighbors, Mrs. Smith down the road who's on a fixed income, who's paying too much in her current living situation, needs something that better fits her needs. Understanding that it's people closer to home and not some outside influence looking for housing was a huge eye-opening experience, I think, for the citizens, and they, for the most part, have been welcoming and understanding of the need.
What are the types of if you are familiar, the rental prices, the monthly rents, either with apartment or even house rentals, and how does that coincide with kind of the income in Prosser?
Our income levels are lower than what you would say in the Tri-Cities. However, Prosser, because it has had a housing shortage across the spectrum, prices are artificially higher.
Sure.
We often say there's a waiting list to move to Prosser. People will call and say, I'll take anything because they live there, work there. We have one thing we looked at was that the workforce in Prosser lived in Prosser but worked out of the area. Now the exact opposite is true with some of our larger employers and processors. People are working in Prosser but they can't find housing, so they're living outside of the area.
Does that have a negative impact in the city if people are coming in and then leaving at the end of the day? They're not shopping in town, things like that?
It does. Tri-City is still close enough that we compete with the retail markets there, but the real impact is on the infrastructure, the trips per day, the traffic, people, driving into the community, working, then leaving again. Those are all wear and tear on your roads, streets, and services.
After these conversations, so popular, it moved to the theater, and things are moving forward in Prosser. What are you looking at for the next year or two when it comes to the availability of these housing units or houses available? Has the city government been working actively to get projects and dirt turned for these types of things?
What we've done is we've created a comprehensive plan and a land use designation map that really steps aside. We get out of the way of private development. Our model and our goal is to get away from the traditional formula of a nonprofit or a government agency building low-income housing. We want to bring private development to the table and mix those needed units in with traditional neighborhoods, both mixed use, single family, and instead of having concentrations of poverty, it becomes just a one community approach.
Has that been well received, that type of model? It sounds like it perhaps could be.
It passed the council in April, and so we are now in the phase of working with the developers to sell the idea of inclusionary housing. And then this summer we'll also be making the necessary adjustments to our zoning codes and subdivision codes to reflect the comp plan.
Is it difficult in the city of Prosser to make those changes to the zoning codes and things like that?
It used to be. For example, the low-income housing project that we had before required a comprehensive plan land use map change and then followed by a zoning change. That's not the case now because we've simplified our comprehensive plan to be very basic. Residential is residential, commercial is commercial, industrial is industrial. We actually have 5 designations now as opposed to the 13 we had before. So any residential land can be converted to a high-density use or a mixed use without that comprehensive plan change. And that simplifies and streamlines the process. And then we rely on the comprehensive plan and then the zoning code updates to make sure that where these things located or where they change, that the infrastructure is in place to support them.
And are you looking at a, excuse me, a larger population increase as well in the next couple years if you're able to get these, more and more people moving in?
Yeah, we think because there's we would like to get back to a closer balance to the number of people that work in Prosser, also living in Prosser.
Mm-hmm.
That we are skewed way out of line with that. And that's been a transition that's happened over the last 20 years. So hopefully over the next 5, we can bring that back by getting some good mixed unit developments that also include the inclusionary housing and bring those people who do want to live in Prosser and they're working there now, bring them back into the city.
Steve Zetz is a city planner for the city of Prosser here in Washington. Thank you for talking with me.